Item 10B, adopt a resolution approving the 2013-18 five-year capital improvement program and appropriating funding for the 2013-14 capital improvement project budget.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we're presenting to you tonight the five-year capital improvement program and the one-year budget for the completion of approximately 51 projects that were presented to you in workshops on October 8th and October 22nd. Before I turn over the presentation in a little more detail to the Finance Director for the first of her last two presentations to the City Council, I would just note that the capital budget includes a wide variety of important projects for our community's future. And as such, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to cover the broad range of issues and topics that might be of interest to the City Council, and to provide an adequate opportunity for the City Council to provide the type of direction that might be valuable to staff as well as to your interest in guiding the completion of those projects. I have received a couple, not a lot, but a couple of City Council member comments on individual projects since our study session, and I'd like to propose that it would be useful, I think, from staff's perspective and potentially also from the City Council's perspective, if as part of your action tonight you consider the following suggestion, and that is that we return to you at the beginning of calendar year 2014 after the holidays with a short update presentation that would cover in a little bit of an opportunity for a little bit of additional consideration of details of some of the projects that we are embarking on in the near term. So where projects are going to receive work and there is some opportunity for you to guide that work before we get started, we would appreciate that guidance. And I'm thinking a short update on the work program over the next 6 months would be of benefit and value to the city's work program. So I would suggest that as part of your action. You don't need to add that, but simply if that's of interest to you, we will produce that. If it's not of interest, you can tell us. So with that, I would turn over to the Finance Director to walk through the details of the budget that you are being asked to approve tonight.
Thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. These first few slides are just a recap of the information that was previously presented during the two City Council study sessions on the CIP budget. We just completed projects in the 2012 to 17 five-year work program. A total of 12 projects were completed during the 2012-13 fiscal year. We have many CIP projects that continue, that are in progress. The 6 that are on the slide behind me are just a handful of those that have recently come to the City Council and requested council action, either in the award of a design contract or construction contract. So those projects are continuing into the 13-14 fiscal year. And finally, moving forward to the 2013 to 18 five-year CIP program, many of the projects that previously appeared will continue and do continue into the proposed budget, but there are also 16 new projects that appear in the five-year work program. Not all these projects are anticipated to begin during the current fiscal year, but are anticipated at some point during the five-year program. And many of these projects propose necessary improvements and repairs to city facilities, as well as technology enhancements to keep pace with the technology-driven society that we're living in and trying to operate and do business in. So moving into the overview of the budget, the five-year work program identifies 61 total projects for a total of $135 million in necessary capital improvements to city facilities and infrastructure. Of that amount, $97 million is to fund critical system improvements to the city's water and wastewater systems. An additional $12 million is dedicated to the Crestmore Neighborhood Reconstruction Project. The 2013-14 Capital Improvement Program budget totals $50 million, with $24 million in carryover appropriations and $26 million in new funding requests. That's a significant dollar amount. However, keep in mind that there are several significant high dollar projects that are included in this amount, which include the Advanced Water Meter Infrastructure Project at a total cost of $5.1 million, the Crestmore Neighborhood Reconstruction Project at $12 million, construction of the College Water Pump Station at $3.4 million, and construction of the Olympic Sewer Pump Station at $3 million, and the replacement of Well 15 at a cost of $3 million. Those 5 projects alone account for more than half of that total amount that is proposed for the current year program. I want to just touch on one topic area that we did discuss during the study session. I just want to revisit that, and that is the proposal for the replacement of vehicles and equipment. The proposed CIP budget has a total of 17 vehicles or pieces of equipment that are recommended for replacement. Page 134 of the CIP budget provides a listing of these vehicles in priority replacement order, which provides the City Council with the opportunity to draw the line at some point if fewer vehicle replacements are desired in the current year. The number of vehicles in need of replacement comes as a result of an extended period of time in which the city has delayed replacement of vehicles in order to conserve limited financial resources during the economic downturn. Oops. Over the past 6 years, the city has spent an average of $160,000 annually on vehicle replacement, which excludes major new acquisitions such as fire apparatus or Vectors. All the vehicles included on the replacement list have exceeded their useful life and are now becoming increasingly costly to maintain and repair. In many cases, parts of these vehicles are no longer available. In total, the 17 vehicles, which includes the replacement of the existing street sweeper, that total amount is $675,500. Just touching again upon the dollars for the 5-year 2013-18 CIP program. Page 14 of the budget, the proposed budget provides a summary of the various funding sources for the CIP program. And if you look at that page, you'll see a total of 36 different funding sources that are incorporated into the work program, which include restricted funds like enterprise revenues, grants, and transportation funding. And I would just like to make a point of noting that city staff make an effort to look for grant opportunities and other sources of funding when capital projects are envisioned and brought forward for consideration, and look to unrestricted funding sources when all other alternatives have been exhausted. That said, a significant part of the 2013-14 work program still has no dedicated funding source and instead requires the use of some of the city's undesignated funding sources. This includes the use of the General Fund Equipment Reserve at a total of $470,600, the Building and Facilities Internal Service Fund at an amount of $136,000, the One-Time Revenue Fund at a total amount of $859,975, and the Technology Fund at $40,000. So that concludes my overview of the CIP budget. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point in time.
Any questions for Kim? Rico?
Yes. As the CIP as a whole, if we're voting on the whole thing, that I would not be able to vote in the affirmative this evening. The city manager's idea that I heard, I think, is a great one. I think she articulated it to me as she did this evening, is it enables us, as we have the elephant in the room, you take a bite out of it, and it's more manageable. It's coordination of staff resources and time on, as the city manager suggested, like 10 items that are the most pressing and the most important to us, and have those come back in 214 and address that way. I appreciated that concept and like that idea.
Any other questions or comments? Action by the council?
introduce the
Well, can I, through the chair?
Yes.
So the motion is then, or I'm sorry, for the resolution would be to approve the CIP as its entirety and not the city manager recommendation, correct?
Before,
Connie, can you restate your recommendation?
My recommendation is that you approve the budget, that you do so with the understanding that you will receive a presentation about the upcoming, let's say, 6 months work program at the beginning of the year that would give you an opportunity to understand in a little bit more detail at your interest those projects that will be specifically receiving near-term attention. Now, there are a number of projects that are in progress, that you've already awarded contracts or have received the opportunity of a little bit more detail. There are a couple of projects that I think staff is anxious to move forward on, and I'll suggest a couple of them that were the subject of comments that I received or questions that I received from council members. One, for example, was the advanced meter reading project. I think there's, honestly, I don't know if staff intends to move forward in the next 6 months, but I certainly think before we do a great deal more work on that it would be very useful to staff, as well as potentially yourselves, given the high dollar value of that project and the need for some really detailed analysis about the cost recovery period, that we spend a little bit of time and thought and discussion with you about that. Another project that I spent some time on today working with staff has to do with the improvements to Station 51. There are a number of component pieces to that project that make up the total $85,000 request. But our presentation to you did not precise that, how much are we proposing to spend for each component part. And I think it might be of utility and interest to you to better understand what the needs at Station 51 are, and that you ask us to present a little bit more information to you. So again, the work program items, those items that are going to be moving forward that you haven't already heard about in any extended detail, would be the subject of a regular city council meeting briefing and an opportunity for you to give us any additional guidance that you might desire. That's, in a long-winded way, is my recommendation.
Okay.
I think you did pretty good. With that, I mean, there are some items in here that we've talked about, but those aren't on the 2004 review, I'll call it, or the bringing back up some of those topics that we talked about on the CIP. Some vehicles, but they're not for the 14 that are being referenced here, or a system. And I appreciate your time this evening going to Station 51 with me. I think that is something you talked about, the safety over at the City Hall. I think that's something that you talked maybe needs to be a little refined. So those are things that why I want to have the opportunity. So what we're going to do it right, because we have the focus and we have the ability. So I'm not against a lot of the items in here with how the city manager outlined it and described it, that I can come to a consensus and go with that.
Ken?
And just to reiterate, I can appreciate my colleagues' concern with this. This is a good program. This is a work program. Every single project will come to us in detail, of which we can, approve or disapprove or make changes to.
Yeah, and basically my recommendation is based on the fact that sometimes for some of these projects there's a significant amount of staff work effort that goes into developing the project. In some cases there is even a design contract that is under the city manager's expenditure authority that might get done before the project comes back to you for construction award. So there is a significant amount of thought process and decision making, and my recommendation would include taking the opportunity to go back, give a little thought to the work program. What might the city council be interested in having a little bit more information about before we march off and do additional work on those projects that are not necessarily going to come back to you for contract awards. Those would be among those that I would say might be useful for that recommendation. In addition, if there are any projects that individual council members have on their minds, and if you want to let me know, we would include those, assuming that they are coming back, that they're in the near-term work program.
Okay.
And plus, I
Understood.
want the last vote with our finance director, obviously all be in the affirmative. So.
Irene, your resolution introduction still stands?
Yes, I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye.